All right, welcome back to Drive Time. Rob and Jenna with you. It's that time of year. Baseball's winter meetings, and the major league clubs are out there spending huge dollars. Well, not all of them, and of course, in the category of not spending would be the Tampa Bay Rays, and it is going to be real hard to keep up.
Well, and just looking at some of the contracts right now, and of course, yesterday, Ben Zobrist, his new deal, he's making over $13 million a season?
4 years, $56 million for a guy in his 30s who's a good second baseman.
And I'm not going to dispute his value. And, when you have a guy that is capable of lining up virtually all over the field, that's invaluable when you're making a playoff run and injuries start to pile up.
And he is a clutch hitter.
He is, absolutely. And happy for him, of course. But when you've got a team like the Rays, their payroll projected about $75 million. How do you compete with that? How do you compete with teams that are signing pitchers for $216 million or $206 million? Well, it's really difficult to do that.
And when you talk about pitchers, we talked earlier about what David Price got from the Red Sox, about $31 million a year, probably more than the entire starting rotation will make for the Rays in the upcoming season. Then the Diamondbacks go out, they get Zach Greinke, they spend about the same money, and they trade for Shelby Miller. So they are loading up. Now, that doesn't always work. The Padres did that last year, and we saw what happened to them. And there's always hope, because when you look at who won the World Series, the Kansas City Royals, not big spenders, but they couldn't afford to hold on to Ben Zobrist, who was a big part of what they did. And, of course, the Houston Astros, second lowest payroll in baseball. They were a playoff team, too. That's the way the Rays are going to have to do it, but it's just not easy.
I'm rooting for the Royals in a situation like this, because usually the teams that are kind of the anomalies, they aren't the big spenders and they make it, can they do it year after year after year? And the fact that the Royals were able to make it back to the World Series, being one of those mid-market teams that's not spending a lot of money, and of course, as you've seen, spending a lot of money doesn't always work, because otherwise the Dodgers would have a number of rings at this point in time. But in recent years, they haven't done much of anything. So it doesn't mean that just because you're going out throwing dollar bills at the ceiling, it doesn't mean that you're going to win. But it certainly does make things, I think, a little bit more difficult when you're trying to compete for talent. You're trying to lure talent. That's one of the reasons why the Rays have really had to go out and get some of these guys that are retreads, that are on the last leg of their careers. Guys like Grady Sizemore, where you didn't even think he had any baseball left in him, and that was a great surprise last year. But how often does that really happen? Because every time you do get a Grady Sizemore, then you also run into Manny Ramirez, and you never even saw him play for the Rays. So
it's going to be tough, but you start with a pitching staff, you start with arms, and the Rays have that. The Mets showed you last year, if you start with a good quality pitching staff, you just need to find a couple of bats. But the question for Tampa will be, where are those bats going to come from? Because when you look at that roster right now, they just don't have them.